Okay, go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm Dick Worth, 2007-2008 Vice Chair of the ASHRAE Historical Committee. Today it's my pleasure to have Lee Burgett, past President of ASHRAE for 2005-2006.
Great.
Lee, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm going to start this off by just asking you about your early background, where you were born, where you went to school, anything about your family that you'd like to share?
Well, Dick, I was born in Grand Rapids, Michigan in the year 1939, middle of the last century. Grew up in the Grand Rapids area with the exception of very early years spent in Detroit while my father worked on a defense assignment during World War II. Mm-hmm. But after the war, we moved back to Grand Rapids, and there I grew up, went to school, finished elementary school, high school at East Grand Rapids High School, and then off to the university. I graduated from Michigan State University with both a bachelor's and a master's degree in mechanical engineering, and then later took an MBA course at the University of Wisconsin.
And then how about your work career? Where did you start off?
Well, when I left Michigan State University after the master's degree, I took a job with a train company, and that was in 1962. Moved to La Crosse, Wisconsin, and I've been there ever since. Actually formally retired from train in 2003, but I continue to work on a part-time basis consulting with train, and enjoy that. Gives me a little time for golf and my gardening activities and things, but keeps me engaged with the industry.
Mm-hmm. What products were you involved with at Train?
Well, early on, I joined actually the research department, mm-hmm. and I had a major in heat transfer. Mm-hmm. So did some work on really components, worked on heat transfer enhancements for fins that were used with fin and tube coils, also with enhancements internally to the tubes for water and refrigerants. Mm-hmm. And after a few years of that, I moved into product development. And most of my time in the product development area involved centrifugal water chillers. Okay. Worked on development of an air-cooled water chiller. I think that hit the market in 1972. And then worked on a series of water-cooled centrifugal chillers, which have been marketed for many years. So that, during my early years, when I was involved technically, if you will, mm-hmm. and then I got promoted up the line, I became a manager. And technical skills, kind of waned from that point on. So my job became more dealing with people, mm-hmm. and the broader aspects of technology development, product development. So worked at that, also spent at the end of my career a few years working with looking at opportunities for acquisition of technology or businesses. That was about it until my retirement, and I continue to be involved on a consulting basis with a variety of industry organizations, including ASHRAE, AHRI, Canadian Standards Association, Green Buildings Council, UL, things of that nature, primarily focused on developing standards.
Mm-hmm. Well, how did you first get involved with ASHRAE?
Okay. Well, that follows the standards track too, because my first direct involvement with ASHRAE was with Standard 15, which was the safety code for mechanical refrigeration. That was back in 1985. And while I had been a member as a student, I hadn't been active prior to that, between the student period and that point. But they got me back into ASHRAE, and I just continued to get deeper and deeper into it. And I've enjoyed every minute of it. It's been a pleasure.
Great. And it sounds like you came into ASHRAE through the technical side, but did you go through the chapter offices or the regional offices, or did you just come into society at a higher level?
Right. I did not serve through the chapter offices. I've been involved with the local chapter and served in some capacities, but not directly as an officer. Earlier in my career, I had been involved with ASME locally. I actually went through the chapter offices with ASME as opposed to ASHRAE.
Okay. And what were your first positions with society?
After I was involved with the standards development for a number of years, I think I moved then to the standards committee. Went through that and chaired the standards committee at one point in time. Served on technology council. I was involved with the programs committee. A variety of a host of committees, pretty much up and down the line.
What are the things that really stand out to you from your presidency? Things that you're really proud of that you were able to get done, or that you enjoyed doing?
Okay. There were a variety of things. We initiated at that point in time a roadmap for sustainability. And so I've seen that, the roadmap being developed, and I've seen elements of that roadmap being implemented as we've gone on in time. So that was a pleasure to see that. We also did a globalization roadmap. And again, saw the roadmap come to fruition, and now we're beginning to see some of the elements of that being incorporated in the society's long-range directions, strategies for the future. And in fact, the international side of the society is the fastest growing element that we have today. And as a recent author titled his book, "The World is Flat," we're certainly moving in that direction. And we see, of course, the economic developments going on in China and India and other Southeast Asian countries change the whole landscape for all of us. And some of it we may look at with very concern when we look at gas at $4 a gallon, because there are other folks in the world that want that petroleum too.
Oh, yeah.
So we have to learn how to conserve energy, and that's one of the elements that I continue to work on as I'm involved with projects today in ASHRAE. I'm on the project committee for 189.1. So we're dealing with aspects of green building, but the core element of that is energy conservation. And in any way I can, I try to promote energy conservation, just as I did during the period when I was president.
It was probably on your watch that Region 12 was able to expand south into Brazil and Argentina. I think they've been around about that long now.
It was in that era. Now, I don't know if it perhaps preceded me by a year or something, but it was in that area. And, we saw developments in Eastern Europe, the Danube chapter and others that were formed there. So, that's only part of an ongoing process now, and having the society expand internationally.
Is there anything that you might have liked to have done that you didn't have a chance to do as president?
Yes. Well, in fact, when I finished my term, the meeting was in Quebec City. And I actually did at that time, what I thought was an analysis of what we did right and what we didn't do. One of the things we didn't do is implement the energy conservation measures that I had hoped for. I went to the 90.1 Executive Committee at one point in time asking for a 20% improvement. Didn't get that. It was disappointingly low. But since things have improved, and today they're doing that job, so I'm proud of them for doing that. But there were other things we did that I thought were improvements. I tried to focus on the society demonstrating continuous improvement in a variety of ways. And the analogy I made was it's a big ship. It doesn't turn on a dime. We've got to guide it and turn it slowly and hit it to the right target.
This may be a little bit of a controversial question, but I know that Train is continuing to support R123.
Correct.
As opposed to most of the other major manufacturers. Would you like to speak to that a little bit? we need to get a little bit of controversy going there.
I can speak to it in a very general way, because during the period I served as a product development engineer and as a manager in product development, we looked at the issues involved with 123, beginning with the Montreal Protocol, 1987 approximately. R11 was taken away from us. Well, early on in my career, going back into the early 70s, we searched for the ideal refrigerant. It was R11. It had all the characteristics and the highest possible coefficient of performance, fit very nicely. But that being lost, what was the next best alternative? And again, we looked at the waterfront, the characteristics of all the refrigerants that were commercially available. 123 stood out. Slightly lower in terms of coefficient of performance than was R11, but significantly better than anything else that we could choose.
Right.
So we picked up on that, and then we got into what we referred to as the refrigerant wars.
Yes.
It was a competitive battle internally in the industry, and so 123 got attacked for a number of different reasons, and one element in particular, it does have a small amount of chlorine in it. So there is some ozone depletion potential. It's quite small. Numbers that I've seen most recently, it's about 0.012. But still, there's some ozone depletion potential there. But one of the redeeming characteristics is that the global warming potential of 123 is very small relative to virtually any of the other alternatives that are available, HFCs for example. So if we look at a balanced environmental impact, looking at both global warming potential and ozone depletion potential, and the energy consumption plays to the global warming as well, because if it consumes too much energy, that means the power plant has to produce more energy, and there's a lot of global warming gases going out of the power plant. So looking at the whole picture and in a balanced way, we still feel to this day that 123 is the best thing that is available commercially.
I haven't stopped specifying it yet.
Thank you.
Although I feel like the days are numbered because of regulations, but anyhow. Well, what are going to be your big activities now that your presidency's over with, and I guess you've been winding down at Train, and
Well, I've continued on about a half-time basis in the consulting role. So long as I have my health, I would hope to continue that. As long as I'm contributing something positive. But I have hobbies. I like to play golf. I'm not very good at it, but it's a fun game.
you have more time to get better now.
Well, that's a good point. But I found with age that my body doesn't execute in quite the way that it did.
I can relate to that.
There was a time when, with the wind at my back and downhill, I could hit the ball about 300 yards. I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
So I enjoy gardening. And that's, it takes me a little longer maybe to get things done in the garden, but I have fun doing it, enjoy it. Plant a variety of vegetables in a space maybe about 20 by 80. And so I feed not only my own immediate family, but anybody else that wants anything. And what I can't give away, I throw away, unfortunately.
Well, hopefully you'll have some happy days, and with your consulting interests, some satisfying days from continuing to contribute to our industry. And it was a pleasure meeting you today for the first time.
Yeah.
Like I say, I've known your name for some time, but I think this is the first time that we've ever been face to face. Thank you again.
You bet. My pleasure.
All right.